The Crystalline Palace on Meridian 7 was one of the most beautiful places in the galaxy. Its walls shimmered with light that came from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. The large meeting room had high ceilings that seemed to touch the stars themselves. Tall windows showed the endless darkness of space beyond, filled with distant light from 1,000 suns. Princess Lyra Vesper walked into this grand hall with her head high and her heart full of hope. She was young, but she carried the weight of her entire empire on her shoulders. The Vesperian Empire was one of the oldest and most powerful nations in all of space. For hundreds of years, they had been strong and proud. But now something terrible was coming. The Void Collective was moving through the galaxy like a dark shadow, destroying everything in their path. Whole worlds had fallen. Entire fleets had been lost. Lyra was here to save her people. She had come to meet with the other leaders of the Coalition of United Planets. She hoped they would agree to join her empire in a great alliance. Together, they would be strong enough to fight back against the darkness. Alone, everyone would fall. The meeting hall was full of important people from across the galaxy. There was Ambassador Thren from the Andromedan Union, a tall being with blue skin that glowed softly. There was Delegate Morn from the Krell Federation, whose large eyes watched everything with cold interest. There were many others too, aliens of different shapes and sizes, each one representing their own powerful nation. Lyra began her speech. She spoke with passion and strength about the danger that was coming. She described the power of the Void Collective and how they destroyed everything they touched. She talked about how the Vesperian Empire had faced them before and had learned their weaknesses. She explained her plan for how all the nations could work together, share their best weapons and knowledge, and stand as one against the darkness. "Together we are unbeatable," Lyra said, her voice ringing through the hall. "But alone we will all fall one by one. I am asking you today to join me, join my people. Let us be allies and friends. Let us face this storm together and survive it." The words were good words. They were true words. But they did not move the hearts of the assembled leaders. Ambassador Thren leaned back in his seat. He did not look at Lyra when he spoke. "The Andromedan Union is grateful for your offer, Princess, but we have our own ways of keeping ourselves safe. We do not believe that such an alliance would protect us. In fact, it might bring the Void Collective's attention more quickly to our worlds." Delegate Morn nodded slowly. "The Krell Federation agrees. Why should we tie ourselves to the Vesperian Empire? You say you have faced the Void Collective before, but you have not defeated them. Many Vesperian ships have been lost. Many soldiers have died. Perhaps you are not as strong as you claim." One by one, the other leaders made excuses. Some said they needed to ask their governments first. Some said they did not have enough resources. Some simply said they preferred to stay neutral. No one said yes. No one stood with Lyra. She listened to all of their words, and with each refusal, something inside her began to break. She was not angry, but she was hurt. She was disappointed. She was alone. Lyra's face did not show her pain, but she felt it deep in her chest. She had come here with hope, and that hope was being slowly destroyed by each cold word and empty excuse. These leaders did not care about her or her people. They cared only about themselves and their own safety. In the back of the hall, a human soldier stood watching. His name was Tae-Sung Park. He was just a security officer, assigned to keep the meeting safe. He was not important. No one really noticed him. He was human, and humans were still new to the galaxy. They were still learning their place among the stars. They were not as advanced as the Viperians or the Andromedans or the Krell. They did not have huge fleets or ancient knowledge. They were small and young in a galaxy full of old, powerful nations. But Tae-Sung Park had something that all the other leaders did not have. He had a human heart. Humans had a special way of seeing things. They understood honor and loyalty and respect in a way that many other species had forgotten. These things were in their blood. They were part of what it meant to be human. As Tae-sung watched Lyra, he saw something that the other leaders could not see. He saw a young woman who was trying to save her people. He saw someone who was brave and honest and true. He saw someone who deserved respect, not because of her power or her position, but because of who she was in her heart. Lyra's patience finally broke. She stood up from her seat. Her voice was still strong, but sadness mixed with the strength now. If no one will stand with the Vesperian Empire, then we will face the Void Collective alone. We will fight and we will fall, and you will be next. But at least we will face the darkness with our heads held high. At least we will not have the shame of refusing to help others. At least we will have our honor. She turned and began to walk toward the great doors of the hall. The other leaders watched her go. None of them moved. None of them called after her. But one figure did move. Tae-sung Park stood up from his position at the back of the room. He was just a soldier. He had no power. He had no authority to speak in this gathering. But he did not care about such things. He walked forward through the crowd of alien leaders. When he reached Lyra, just as she was about to leave the hall, Tae-sung did something that surprised everyone. He slowly lowered himself onto one knee in front of her. It was an old human gesture, one that meant deep respect and honor. He bowed his head and stayed there, kneeling on the floor before the Vesperian princess. The room went completely silent. The leaders from all the great nations of space stared in shock. A human, just a simple human soldier, the least powerful being in the entire hall, and he was the only one who showed respect to the princess. Lyra looked down at Tae-sung with shock in her eyes. She had expected coldness and rejection, but instead she found something genuine. She found honor. She found a soul who understood what was truly important. Tae-sung looked up at her with steady eyes. "I will stand with you, princess," he said simply. "My people will stand with you. You deserve respect, and you will receive it, not because it is easy, but because it is right." In that moment, everything changed. The image spread across every news network in the galaxy within hours. A simple act, a human man on one knee before a Vesperian princess. But that simple act was powerful. It showed something that all the long speeches and political arguments could not show. It showed genuine respect. It showed that someone cared more about doing what was right than about power or safety or politics. The political leaders who had refused Lyra began to feel uncomfortable. The Andromedan Union received many messages from their citizens asking why a human soldier showed more courage than their own leaders. The Krell Federation faced questions about their decision to refuse help. Even neutral nations began to reconsider. If a small human with no power and no advantage could find the courage to stand with someone in need, what excuse did the great and powerful nations have? Minister Kwan, the leader of the human delegation to the coalition, found himself in a strange position. Tae-sung Park was technically under his authority, but he had acted without permission. According to the rules, Tae-sung should have been punished or sent back to Earth. But Minister Kwan did not want to punish him. The minister knew that Tae-sung had done something important. He had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. Instead of punishment, Minister Kwan called Lyra personally. He asked if the human alliance would still be interested in joining the Vesperian proposal. This time, his words were different. This time, they carried real hope and real commitment. Within days, the coalition officially agreed to support the Vesperian alliance. Then, one by one, the other nations began to change their minds. The Andromedan Union sent a formal apology. Ambassador Thren visited Lyra in her private chambers and explained that corporate interests had pressured him to refuse. The Krell Federation admitted they had been afraid of Vesperian military power and had thought refusing the alliance would keep them safer. But now they understood that the real safety came from standing together. Tae-sung found himself spending more and more time with Lyra. At first, they met to discuss the details of how humans could help with the alliance, but soon, their conversations went much deeper. They talked about their worlds, their families, and what it meant to be leaders of their people. Lyra shared the heavy burden of being a princess. She explained how every decision she made affected millions of lives. She talked about the pressure she felt to be perfect, to always know the right answer, to never show weakness. "People look to me for hope," she told Tae-sung one evening as they sat in a quiet room looking out at the stars. "But sometimes I am afraid. Sometimes I do not know if I can save my people." Tae-sung listened carefully. He did not try to make her feel better with false words. Instead, he shared his own story. He told her about how humanity had been alone for thousands of years. They had not known that other species even existed beyond their small world. Then, one day, everything changed. They discovered faster-than-light travel. They left Earth and found the galaxy full of ancient, powerful nations that were far ahead of them in every way. At first, other species saw us as less than they were, Tae-sung explained. "We were primitive. We were young. We did not have the technology or knowledge they had. But we had something they did not. We had the ability to work together and adapt quickly. We had a kind of creativity that came from having to solve problems without ancient resources or old knowledge. We learned that our weakness was also our strength." Lyra listened to his words, with a new understanding growing in her mind. She began to see humanity differently. They were not less than the old, powerful nations. They were different. And sometimes being different was exactly what was needed. Over the weeks that followed, Lyra and Tae-sung worked together on the details of the alliance. They sat in meetings with military commanders and technology experts. They studied Vesperian weapons systems and learned about human tactical methods. They discovered that when they worked together, they could solve problems that neither species could solve alone. The Vesperian technology was advanced, but it was rigid. Human soldiers could think quickly and change their plans on the spot. When they combined both approaches, something powerful emerged. The alliance began to feel like something real, not just a piece of paper with signatures on it. It felt like a true partnership built on mutual respect. News of this partnership started to change how the galaxy saw both humans and Viperians. Artists painted the image of Tae-sung kneeling before Lyra. Musicians wrote songs about the human soldier who showed more honor than the great leaders. Poets wrote verses about respect that crossed the distances between stars. But the most powerful moment came when Lyra accepted an invitation to visit Earth. She landed on the human world for the first time, and Tae-sung was there to welcome her. He brought her to meet his family. His mother, Mi-jin, prepared traditional Korean food. His father, Sung-ho, told stories about human history and struggle. His younger sister, Ji-woo, showed her projects in computer science and data analysis. Lyra sat with these ordinary humans and realized something important. The strength she had seen in Tae-sung did not come from his rank or his power. It came from his family, from his culture, from the values that humans had learned through thousands of years of living together on one world. When humans faced survival challenges on their home planet, they learned that cooperation and honor were not just nice ideas. They were survival tools. As the celebration of the alliance grew larger, both species began to understand what Tae-sung's simple act of kneeling had really meant. It meant that strength was not just about weapons and fleets. It meant that respect was not something you commanded with power. It was something you earned by showing that you cared more about doing what was right than about your own safety or advantage. The alliance became not just a military agreement, but a symbol of something new in the galaxy. Two very different species, learning from each other. The ancient Vesperian wisdom combined with human creativity and heart. And at the center of it all was a young princess and a humble soldier who had shown the galaxy that the greatest power of all was the power to see value in others and to stand with them. 6 months had passed since the Great Alliance was formed. The galaxy had been busy. Vesperian and human military teams trained together on stations and planets across Coalition space. Joint science teams studied new weapons and defensive systems. Cultural exchange programs brought young people from both species together to learn and grow. But not everyone was happy about the new alliance. In the halls of the Vesperian Empire, powerful voices spoke against it. The most important of these voices belonged to Darius Vex, a High Council member who had served the Vesperian Empire for over 100 years. Darius Vex was old and wise in many ways, but he was also stuck in the ways of the past. He could not accept that a young princess would trust her safety and her empire's future to humans, a species that had only recently joined the galaxy. "She has betrayed us," Darius Vex said in secret meetings with other conservative members of the council. "She has given our greatest technologies to creatures who have known about space travel for barely 200 years. She has weakened our military by forcing us to work alongside beings who are still learning how to survive in the cosmos. And worst of all, she has fallen for this human soldier. She thinks with her heart instead of her mind. This is not the wisdom of a leader. This is the foolishness of youth." These words found listeners among those who feared change. The old families of the Vesperian Empire had held power for centuries. They did not want to share that power with new allies. They wanted things to remain as they had always been, with Vesperians at the top and all other species far below them. While the politicians plotted in the shadows, the galaxy faced a real threat. The Void Collective was not waiting for the new alliance to become perfectly organized. They were attacking harder and faster than before. The darkness was spreading like a disease across space, consuming everything in its path. One day, a distress signal came from the Kepler sector. A Coalition research station had been attacked without warning. Hundreds of scientists and workers were in danger. Lyra and Tae Sung, now working together as co-commanders of the Allied forces, made an immediate decision. They would send a rescue mission. Tae Sung led the human forces. They flew faster than the old military rules said was safe. They used tactics that the ancient Vesperian commanders said would fail. But the humans did not follow old rules. They thought on their feet. When one plan did not work, they immediately tried something different. When they discovered new information during the fight, they changed their strategy without needing to ask permission from higher commanders. The Vesperian forces fought with their usual strength and power. Their weapons were better than anything the humans had. But as the battle continued, something amazing happened. The humans and Vesperians began to move together like a single creature. The Vesperians provided strength and firepower. The humans provided speed and adaptation. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. But victory came with a terrible cost. Near the end of the battle, a Void Collective weapon was about to destroy a group of Vesperian soldiers. Tae Sung saw the danger. Without thinking about his own safety, he ran directly into the path of the weapon. It struck him hard, and he fell to the ground, badly wounded. The Vesperian soldiers picked him up and carried him to safety. The mission was completed. The research station was saved. But Tae Sung was severely hurt. He was taken to the medical center where the doctors said he would live, but his recovery would be long and difficult. When Lyra heard that Tae Sung was wounded, she stopped everything she was doing. She flew immediately to the medical center. She sat beside his bed hour after hour, day after day. She did not leave his side. She held his hand and talked to him, even when he was asleep. The image of the Vesperian princess, sitting beside a wounded human soldier, spread across the galaxy once again. News channels showed her keeping watch over him. Artists drew pictures of her face full of worry and care. Everyone could see that this was not just a political alliance anymore. This was something deeper. This was about real connection between two people from different worlds. Darius Vex watched these images with anger growing in his heart. He saw how Lyra's love and care for Tae Sung made the alliance stronger, not weaker. He saw how the galaxy was beginning to accept that humans and Vesperians could be true partners. He knew that his plans to destroy the Alliance by creating doubt would not work. He would need to try something different and more dangerous. In his private chambers, Darius Vex made a decision that would change everything. He decided to create false evidence that would make it look like humans had betrayed the Alliance. He decided to invent a lie so big and so convincing that it would tear apart the trust between the two species. He did not know that his plans were already being watched. In the medical center, Tai Sung slowly recovered. With each day that passed, his strength grew. He watched Lyra sitting beside him, and he understood more clearly what it meant to have someone stand by you when you needed help the most. He also thought about how fragile the Alliance still was. It was strong in some ways, but it could still be broken if someone tried hard enough to break it. As Lyra sat beside his bed during his final week of recovery, Tai Sung held her hand. "The Alliance will face difficult tests," he said quietly. "There will be those who want to destroy what we have built. But as long as we stand together, as long as we trust each other, we will survive anything that comes." Lyra nodded. She did not know how true his words would become. She did not know that the greatest test was about to begin. But she knew that whatever came, she would face it with Tai Sung at her side, and that made her feel strong enough to face anything. 2 months after his recovery, Tai Sung returned to work. He and Lyra continued their mission to strengthen the alliance between humans and Vesperians. They created a new military academy where young officers from both species could train together. They organized cultural festivals where humans and Vesperians could eat together, celebrate together, and learn about each other's ways of life. They proved to the galaxy that species could change, grow, and become something greater when they chose to work together. But while they worked to build their future, Darius Vex was working in the shadows to destroy it. The trap was carefully planned. Darius Vex and his supporters created false messages that looked like they came from human leaders. In these false messages, they talked about secretly negotiating with the Void Collective. They claimed that humanity was planning to use the alliance with the Vesperians to weaken them from inside, making it easier for the Void Collective to attack. They created fake videos of human officials meeting with Void Collective representatives. The videos looked real because Darius Vex had access to advanced technology that could create images that were almost impossible to distinguish from truth. They forged documents with official seals and signatures. They even paid some corrupt Vesperian military officers to say they had evidence of human betrayal. The attack came suddenly. One morning, without warning, a team of Vesperian soldiers arrived at the Coalition headquarters. They had orders from the High Council to arrest Tai Sung Park on charges of treason and negotiation with the enemy. The evidence they showed was the false information that Darius Vex had created. Minister Quan was shocked and angry. He demanded to see the proof. The Vesperian officers showed him the fake videos and documents. Even though they were false, they were so well made that they seemed to prove everything they claimed. Lyra was called before the High Council. The council demanded to know if she knew about human negotiations with the Void Collective. They asked if she had been fooled by Tai Sung and his people. They said that she had been young and naive, and that she had trusted the wrong beings. Lyra's heart was breaking, but she refused to believe the accusations. She knew Tai Sung. She had sat beside him in the hospital. She had seen his heart and his character. She knew he could not be a traitor. But she also understood that she alone could not prove him innocent. She needed evidence. Tai Sung was held in a secure facility while the investigation continued. He could have felt despair, but instead, he felt something different. He felt a kind of clarity. Years ago, he had studied Earth's history as part of his military training. He had learned about times when honest people had been falsely accused. He had learned how people had fought against false evidence with truth. "This is not the first time truth and lies have fought," he told the soldiers who guarded him. "On Earth, We learned that even the most convincing lie contains small flaws. We learned to look for these flaws and expose them. He thought carefully about the evidence. In his military training, he had learned about technology and how it could be misused. He realized that the videos must have been created using specific tools. He realized that false documents always had small details that did not match real ones. Tae-sung asked to speak with Minister Kwan. When the minister came, Tae-sung explained his theory. "The evidence against me is false," he said. "But false evidence leaves traces. If we examine the digital files carefully, we will find these traces. We need a skilled computer analyst to look at the evidence." Minister Kwan listened carefully. He had known Tae-sung for years. He trusted him. He agreed to allow a careful examination of the evidence. Ji-woo was a young human who worked in data analysis. She was brilliant with computers and technology. When she looked at the videos, she immediately saw something wrong. The light patterns did not match the laws of physics. The shadows were in impossible places. When she examined the documents, she found computer code hidden inside them, code that could only have been put there by someone who wanted to hide the truth. "These are not real," Ji-woo said confidently. "Someone created these using technology. Someone wanted to make these false things look real." But finding the truth was not enough. They needed to find who had created the lies. Ji-woo used her skills to trace the code back to its source. The code led to a computer system that belonged to Darius Vex. At the same time, something else happened. Commander Kai, a high-ranking Vesperian officer, began to have doubts about the evidence. She had fought beside humans in battle. She had seen their courage and honor. She did not believe they were traitors. She began her own investigation, working in secret. Commander Kai discovered that some of the military officers who claimed to have seen human betrayal had been paid money by hidden accounts. These accounts belonged to people close to Darius Vex. She discovered that Darius Vex had gathered a group of powerful people who wanted to stop the alliance between humans and Vesperians. When Lyra saw the evidence that Ji-woo and Commander Kai had gathered, her heart felt lighter for the first time since Tae-sung had been arrested. She took this evidence to the High Council. She stood before them with strength and passion. "I was wrong about many things," she said. "I was wrong to trust without questioning. But I was not wrong about Tae-sung and the humans. These beings have shown us nothing but honor and loyalty. The accusations against them are built on lies and deception created by those who fear change." She showed them the proof. She showed them how the evidence had been created. She showed them who had created it. The council members looked at each other with shame in their eyes. They had almost destroyed an honest alliance based on false evidence. They had almost chosen fear over truth. Darius Vex and his supporters were arrested. The conspirators were tried in a fair court, and they were found guilty of treason against the Empire. The consequences were severe, but justice was served. Tae-sung was released immediately. When he walked out of the secure facility, Lyra was waiting for him. They did not speak many words. They did not need to. They simply knew that they had passed through a great test together, and their alliance had become stronger because of it. The High Council issued a new statement. It was not just an apology to humans, but a declaration of permanent union. Humanity was no longer a temporary ally. Humans were now full members of the Vesperian Empire and the Coalition of United Planets. They had seats on the highest councils. They had equal voice in all decisions. And most importantly, they had proven that even in the face of powerful lies and great pressure, truth and justice could win if good people were willing to fight for them. 3 months after the conspiracy was exposed, a new and terrible truth began to emerge. As investigators continued to examine Darius Vex's communications and files, they made a discovery that was far more frightening than the conspiracy itself. The false evidence against Tae-sung and the humans was not the only secret that Darius Vex had kept. The investigators found records of communications between Darius Vex and beings from the Void Collective. At first, this seemed impossible. The Void Collective was an enemy that attacked and destroyed. How could a leader of the Vesperian Empire be communicating with them? But as more evidence emerged, the terrible answer became clear. Darius Vex was not acting alone. There were members of the government, military, and even business leaders from multiple species who were compromised. They had received special implants, small devices that were inserted into their bodies and brains. These implants allowed the Void Collective to control their thoughts and actions. Some of these compromised leaders did not even know what they were doing. They were like puppets, with the Void Collective pulling the strings. The investigation expanded across all Coalition space. On world after world, they discovered this same horror. The Void Collective had been infiltrating the galaxy for years, placing these implants into positions of power. They had been deliberately causing conflicts between different species. They had been making sure that the galaxy remained divided and weak. And then, when everything was chaos and confusion, they would attack and destroy the weakened defenses. The discovery sent shockwaves through every government in space. The Krell Federation discovered that their military commander had been compromised. The Andromedan Union found that some of their most important scientists were controlled by the Void Collective. Every nation, every people had been infiltrated. Panic began to spread. If the Void Collective could control leaders, then no one was safe. Who could be trusted? Who was really thinking their own thoughts and making their own choices? It was at this moment that humanity proved its true value to the Alliance. Because humans had joined the galaxy so recently, and because they did not have the same old power structures as other species, they had not been infiltrated as deeply. The Void Collective had tried, but they had found it harder to place implants in human leaders. More importantly, human medical science, which had developed separately from the rest of the galaxy, discovered something special. Human doctors had been studying the implants and had learned how to detect them without harming the people who carried them. They had also learned how to remove the implants safely, freeing the controlled people from the Void Collective's power. Tae-sung was asked to lead a special task force. This task force would travel to each world, identify which leaders had been compromised, and help remove the implants. It was dangerous work. Some compromised leaders did not want to be freed. Some were so deeply under the control of the Void Collective that they fought against those trying to help them. Some had even committed terrible crimes while under that control. Tae-sung accepted this difficult mission immediately. He asked that Jiwoo be part of his team because her computer skills would help identify which leaders had been compromised. He also asked that Commander Kai join them because her military knowledge would help protect everyone during the dangerous process of removing the implants. Lyra offered to lead the diplomatic efforts. While Tae-sung's team worked to free the controlled leaders, Lyra would meet with the governments and peoples of each world. She would help them understand what had happened. She would help them forgive their leaders who had been controlled. She would help them see that the Void Collective was the real enemy, not the leaders who had been made to do terrible things against their will. The work was long and hard. On some worlds, they encountered resistance and anger. The Krell people were furious that their military had been controlled by the enemy. The Andromedans felt shame that their scientists had been corrupted. Other species felt violated and afraid. But slowly, with Lyra's words of understanding and Tae-sung's actions of compassion, the fear began to change into unity. People understood that this was not a time to blame each other. This was a time to stand together. The Void Collective had tried to destroy them by turning them against each other, but they would not let that happen. Lyra gave speech after speech, explaining how all the species had been victims of the Void Collective's deception. "We are not enemies," she would say to the gathered crowds. "We were made to act like enemies by forces that we did not even know existed. But now we know the truth. Now we can see that our real enemy is not each other. Our real enemy is the darkness that tried to divide us. And we will not let that darkness win. We will stand together, united as never before. With each implant that was removed, another mind was freed. With each freed person, the alliance became stronger. They could now trust their leaders again. They could now focus all their energy on fighting the Void Collective instead of fighting each other. As the months of discovery and healing continued, Tae-sung and Lyra began to understand something important. The real strength of the Alliance was not in its weapons or its technology. Its real strength was in the choice that each person and each species made every day to stand together. It was in the willingness to forgive, to understand, and to keep hoping even when things seemed dark. One evening, as Tae-sung and Lyra stood together looking out at the stars, Lyra took his hand. "You see now why I needed to believe in what we were building," she said softly. "I did not know about the infiltration then. I could not have known. But my heart told me that humans and Vesperians working together could create something good, something strong, something that could not be broken by lies or fear." Tae-sung smiled. "My people have an old saying," he said. "In the darkest night, the smallest light can guide the way. I think that is what we are doing now. We are being the light that guides the galaxy through its darkest time." The conspiracy against the Alliance had been broken. The infiltration had been discovered. But the greatest challenge was still to come. The Void Collective itself was out there, still powerful, still hungry for destruction. And now the galaxy would face it not as divided nations, but as one united force, stronger than it had ever been before.